Okay, I'm going to go through how to make yet another iconic character using simple shapes such as ellipses and rectangles. So I've dragged and dropped my image into my artboard, which I created by artboard by selecting File New and then selecting 1920 by 1080 pixels, entitling it whatever I want to call it, such as like Dexter, and pressing Create. And it created this document. So after I dragged and dropped the image in, I'm going to hold down Option if I am on a Mac or hold down Alt if I am on a PC to drag out a copy. I can shift select both and then just drag them to center it. And I'm using my direct selection tool, which is shortcut V on the keyboard. So what I'm going to do is create a new layer. I can do this by selecting, and let me alter my document dimensions really quickly. Okay, so if you press the plus icon with the square around it, that creates a new layer. So the bottom layer, I can double click on the name layer 1 to entitle it Reference. Layer 2 will be the layer in which I draw my objects onto it. So in the space next to the eye icon, I'm going to press the lock and I'm going to select layer 2. I'm going to start with an ellipse for the pupil. I'm pressing I on my keyboard or selecting the eyedropper tool from the toolbar. I can press L on my keyboard to draw an ellipse. So when you're drawing this ellipse, the fill should be eyedrop to black. If you notice the stroke is in front, you can simply set it to none, which is the backslash shortcut, and you can select back to the fill being in the front. If I press V on my keyboard, I can rotate the ellipse and then line it up with the pupil. And then hovering over the topmost edge, I can stretch it to scale with to match the reference a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select out of my current selection, press I on my keyboard for the eyedropper once more, press L on my keyboard, and draw out a secondary ellipse to match the interior glass shape. Again, I can press V on my keyboard for my selection tool to move it over as needed, to rotate it, and to scale it a little bit larger. I can zoom in through using Command plus and Command minus if I'm on a Mac, or I can use Control plus and Control minus if I'm on a PC. Now that I have the glass to be the shape that I want, I can go to Object, Arrange, and Send to Back. I'm going to do the same for the opposite eye soon enough, but I'm going to make the glass rim or the frame. So I'm going to press I on my keyboard, select the black, press L on my keyboard, and draw out an additional ellipse. I'm going to select V with my selection tool and rotate the glass to match the reference. And you can use your arrow keys to gently nudge the shape forward or backward as needed as well. Okay, once I'm satisfied with the position and scale, I can go to Object up at the top, then select Arrange, then select Send to Back. All right, now I have the outermost frame for the glasses. I'm going to press M on my keyboard, which opens up the rectangle tool. I'm going to draw out a rectangle and then select V for the selection tool to rotate. I'm going to drag it upward to match the edge. And what I'm going to do is if I press A on my keyboard, that allows me to select the direct selection tool. This will allow me to pull up the top and bottom points to match the way in which the frame for the glasses becomes wider towards the glass and thinner towards the ear. So I'm just selecting each point one at a time and tapering them inward. Okay. The next step is to do the nose. So I'm going to press I on my keyboard to eyedrop to the skin tone. I'm going to press P on my keyboard to pull up the pen tool. I'm going to click at the point where the frame of the glass meets the nose, click a secondary point where the tip of the nose is, click another point at the base of the nose. And actually, if I'm looking closely, you'll notice this is not a perfectly straight line, so I can undo my last point by pressing Command Z. So if I click and drag downward and to the left, kind of at a diagonal, it creates a slight curve at a diagonal. I can then click on the ridge where the nose meets the upper portion of the lip, and now I can click and drag down and to the right to make an additional curve. I'm then going to click at the base of the lip, click and drag up into the left diagonally for this line right here, and then I'm going to click further down over here, because if I try to end the point right at the point of the frame, it makes my curve a little too condensed, and I want to stretch it so it matches the reference as best as possible. And then I simply conclude the shape by ending at the first point at which I started. So I accidentally just now rotated my canvas, and how I fixed that is down at the bottom of my interface for Illustrator. You'll see there is the zoom level, which you can input a number manually, and a rotation value. So I'm going to set the rotation degree to 0, and that simply flips my screen back to place. I can now select this shape, select Object, and Arrange, and select Send to Back. I need to create a taper or offset for this shape. So what I'm going to do is select, so I'll show you two ways we can do this. So if I go to Properties and I select Stroke and set the stroke upward, and I'm just increasing the stroke value by clicking the up arrow, you'll see that it creates a thick white stroke. I can change the color of the stroke by going over to my toolbar, double clicking, and changing the color to black, and then pressing OK. So if I select the stroke, it does limit the surface area of the skin tone on the inside because the stroke is cutting into that surface area. So if you click the word stroke under the Properties panel, which if you cannot find the Properties panel, you can go to Window and then scroll down to Properties. You'll see I don't actually have to click it though, because Properties already has a check mark next to it, meaning my properties panel is already open, and it likely is docked on the right-hand side of your screen. So again, I'm going to press the word stroke. I'm going to set the alignment of the stroke to the outside, so it's placing the stroke on the outside area. And then I'm going to click round corner. Actually, I'm going to keep the corners as is. But you'll notice that this elongates the point and stroke too far. So what I'm instead going to do is set my stroke to 0, and I'll show you an alternative method for getting the outer black shape. So if I go to Object, Path, and Offset Path, this creates a duplicate of the original shape, but allows me to offset the shape in scale by a certain pixel value amount. So I'm going to set the offset to, let's say, 5, and because preview is checked, I can simply press tab to test out how that looks. So I'm seeing the 5 is not quite enough. Let me try 7.5 and then hit tab again on my computer. So that is getting a lot closer. And I think that while it's not perfect, I'm going to set the joins to meter and then press OK. And I'm going to eyedrop to the black. So I selected the shape and then pressed I on my keyboard and then selected the black reference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my direct selection tool, which is shortcut A as in apple, shift select the 2 points on the outside and get them to line up a little bit more with the reference. Shift select the curve point and line that up a bit more with the reference. Select this point and line it up a little bit more with the reference. And you'll want to be careful that you are grabbing the center of an anchor point rather than the handles, because the handles will change the position of the curve or direction of the curve, versus the anchor point will grab the entire curve and allow you to move it. At any point though, you can grab the handle and adjust it to match the reference a little bit more. I'm going to select this point right here, which was an extra point, and pull that down. If we for some reason though didn't have that extra point, you can press plus on your keyboard to add an additional point here, and then use your direct selection tool to pull that point downward to make the taper that we're interested in. You'll see here that the curve has a little bit of a sharp angle here, so if I select this anchor point, a bevel option is available, so I can pull that out to get that to smooth out. So next, now that I've gotten the bottom half pretty good, I'm going to address the top half. So I'm going to select this point and drag it out, select the next point, drag it out, and select the next point and drag it out. I will have to adjust the handle to get it to align with the reference, and that probably means I'm going to have to add an additional point right here and get rid of this point right here, or simply take this point and drag it over and then adjust this point right here and pull that handle inward towards the anchor point. So we now have the nose, so we can duplicate the eyes. Dexter is a little bit more complicated of a character than someone like Blossom, who I went over in a different illustration, because he has a little bit more organic shape to him. He does have some symmetrical elements, but he also has interesting tapers on the strokes for him. versus a character like Blossom is more or less perfectly symmetric, and all of her strokes on the outside are very even. So, and when I refer to stroke, I'm referring to the like outline or the black offset. So, I'm going to take the eye, which is the pupil, hold down Option, and drag out a duplicate. The second eye is a little bit smaller than the first eye, so we will need to use the direct selection tool to scale it in a bit. We're going to go to the rightmost edge, bring it in, and bring it down. Go to the topmost edge and drag it downward as well. And then rotate just a little. We're going to take the blue of the frame and hold down Shift and select the black of the frame and hold down Option and drag it over. And that would work perfectly if the glass was the exact same size. However, I'm realizing the second glass is smaller than the first glass, so I'm going to go ahead and hit delete. I'm going to grab the blue to do this one at a time to get it as precise as possible. I'm going to hold down Option if I'm on a Mac, Alt if I'm on a PC, and drag outward. I'm going to use my direct selection tool to drag inward for the right hand side and drag down for the upper portion and drag upward for the bottom edge to scale it inward. I can then select Object and then Arrange and then Send to Back. I'm going to duplicate out the frame now, so I'm going to select the black frame using my direct selection tool, shortcut V, hold down Option and drag out a duplicate and line it up with the leftmost edge. You can use your arrow keys on your keyboard if you want to scooch it over at all. I'm going to hover over the rightmost edge of the bounding box. If for whatever reason you don't see a bounding box around it, you can always check for it because it will say hide bounding box if the bounding box is visible, and it will say show bounding box if the bounding box is not visible. So I'm going to scale it inward to match the proportions a little bit more. Scale it upward to condense it a little bit to match the perspective. And then once I'm done adjusting the scale and position, I can go to Object, then select Arrange, and then select Send to Back. Okay. So we have the eyes, nose, and nose, and we need to do the lower portion of the mouth. So I'm going to press I on my keyboard, and then I'm going to press P on my keyboard. So this, again, illustration requires the pen tool more than the Blossom illustration that I did in the other tutorial because this is not like a perfectly symmetric shape. So if I select the first point, which will be the leftmost edge of the tongue, I can click and drag to the right to select the curve for the top of the tongue, and then come down to the right bottom edge of the tongue, and then just do a single and simple click. Then I can go to the bottommost edge of the tongue, click and drag to the left at a slight angle, and then finish off the curve by clicking and dragging downward, which is like kind of down and at a diagonal for the leftmost portion of the tongue. So I'm completing the path. What I can do is I can select this shape and I can select Object, Path, and Offset Path. I can set the offset path to perhaps 6.5 and press Tab to preview how it looks, or maybe 5.5, and then press OK. I can then press I on my keyboard to eyedrop to the black, and then use the direct selection tool, which is shortcut V, to scale it up a little bit as needed, and then rotate it just a tiny bit as needed to match the reference a little bit more. Okay, so now we're going to tackle the red area, which is the back of the mouth. So I'm going to press I on my keyboard and then click the area. So you want to make sure that it is filling the fill area versus filling the stroke, because if the stroke is in front with the center square missing from it, that creates an outline versus a filled shape object. So remember that the filled shape object should have the strike through, which is the backslash shortcut, and you select over to the fill, so it is filling the proper area. I'm going to press P on my keyboard, and I'm going to click to the point where the tongue meets the rest of the mouth outside of the stroke area. I'm going to click and drag up and to the right a little bit to create a bit of a diagonal, and then I'm going to click up at the top where it meets the frame. Right now I'm not going to worry about the curve of the glasses because we're going to send it behind the glasses when we arrange the ordering or stacking of these shapes. So I'm just going to click at the right edge. I'm going to click and drag downward, and it's at a slight angle, and then click right here to where it meets the outline of the tongue. Again, I'm just going to click straight across because we're sending this to back. So I can select now Object, select Arrange, and select Send to Back. Okay, we can create the offset for the mouth as well. So I can select Object, Path, and Offset Path to preview how that will look. And I'm going to press OK at 5.5. I'm going to eyedrop with it still selected, pressing I on my keyboard to the black area. The problem is the taper or outline is thinner on the right side than it is on the left side. So I'm going to need to grab my direct selection tool, which is shortcut A as in Apple, and I'm going to shift click the outermost points, and you might need to zoom in to do this, and then I'm just going to drag them to the outside so they line up a little bit more with the reference. You can always select one of the given points and then grab the handle and just manipulate it so that way it aligns with the curve a little bit better. You may find that you need to take the outline of the mouth as well and drag it over to match the reference a little bit more as well. And you may find that you need to adjust some of the handles to match the reference a little bit more as well. I find that going really slow when working with the pen tool when you're first beginning is the best way to get really precise curves. So I'm going to select the bottommost point, drag it downward, and pull out the handle and select the outermost point on the right and drag that downward as well. Finally, I'm going to grab the outermost point on the outline of the mouth and connect it. Grab the outermost point on the top, connect it with the frame, And you'll notice that if I shift select these 2 points right here where they're at a little bit more of a hard angle, I can actually bevel those points out to get a smoother curve. So if I were to check how my graphic is looking thus far, I could go to Layers under my Layers panel, which is Window and Layers. You can see that it's checked on, so you can see that it's visible over here. I can hide the visibility of my reference by clicking the eye icon, and you can see that the facial features are already looking how they should. I'm going to toggle back on the visibility of my reference. Okay. I'm going to just finish off with the little extension of the lip. So I'm going to press P on my keyboard since my eyedropper is already outlined to, because my eyedropper already is filled to black. I'm going to press the point right here, click and drag at a diagonal, and then click the end. I'm going to click and drag to the left at a diagonal and finish with the point that connects to the offset or outline of the tongue. And then I can click to the original point. Okay. Whenever you're done with a pen path, you can always just select over to your selection tool so that you're not creating more pen points. Okay, going to eyedrop now to the general face shape. So I'm going to press I on my keyboard and click to the skin tone. I'm going to press P on my keyboard and I'm going to select the area where the frame of the glasses meets the approximate edge. I'm going to click where it meets the hair. I'm going to click and drag to the right, and then I'm going to click where it meets the glass frame. I can technically just go straight down and click once more because I'm arranging it to the back. So I'm going to select Object, Arrange, and Send to Back. And now you'll see that that new shape does not overlap the glasses anymore. Okay. I'm going to press L on my keyboard for the ellipse tool and hold down Shift to maintain the proportions so it gets more of a circular, symmetric shape rather than an oval shape. I can use my selection tool to drag it over to match up with the ear. Okay. What I'm going to do is press P on my keyboard and I'm going to click where the edge of the jaw starts. I'm going to click and drag to the right and downward at a diagonal, and then click at the chin. I'm going to click and drag up and to the right to create the curve of the cheek, and then click to where it connects with the glass. I'm going to click to where it reaches between the glasses, and then click over to the edge where it meets the ear, and then click downward. So I can select Object, Arrange, and Send to Back now, and you'll see that fills in the lower half of the face. I'm going to press P on my keyboard to get the forehead region. So I'm going to click where the glasses meets the hair, click and drag to the right at a slight upward angle, and then click where there's the indent of the hair. And to achieve that secondary point, I just did Command Z to undo it so you can see it one more time. And at any point you make a pen path point you want to get rid of, you can just press Command Z and that will undo your actions. So I'm going to select the point where the indent of the hair occurs, click and drag upward, and at a leftmost angle, which causes the line of the anchor point and handles to tip at a left diagonal. Then if I click the center point, that will get rid of the top handle of the curve so that I can easily click and drag to the right at like an almost horizontal but slightly lifted on the right side, and then click to the outermost edge. I can now click downward, click to like the center of the pupil of the left side, and click upward to finish the shape. I can press V on my keyboards, that way it commits the change and whatnot, and I can select Object, Arrange, and send it back. So if I wanted to again preview how this is looking thus far, I can toggle off the visibility of the reference. Okay, so next we could tackle the hair. So I'm going to press I on my keyboard and eyedrop by selecting to the orange of the hair. I can press P on my keyboard to grab the pen tool, and I'm going to click on the innermost edge of the orange. I'm going to click and drag up and to the right to create that outer curve for the back of the head. I'm going to click and drag, moving it horizontally and then tipping it slightly down to get that top portion of the curve. And then you'll see that my handle naturally wants to continue like so. So I'm going to click and drag down and to the left to create this portion of the curve. Sometimes what I do in order to see what I'm doing a little bit better, because it's already automatically like filling my shape as I'm drawing it, is I will toggle the fill in the stroke, clicking the arrow on the double-sided arrow on my toolbar to flip the fill in the stroke temporarily. I can then click and drag to extend the next point, and then click at the center of the anchor point, and then maybe click once more just to get it lined up with the next point. I'm going to click and drag to the left and downward slightly at a diagonal angle, and then here it seems to curve where it tapers inward right here behind the glasses. So I'm going to click and drag to the left right here, and then click in the center to get rid of the handle. I'm going to click and drag to the left once more, and I'm going to finish the shape by clicking and dragging it down and to the right to get the general hair shape. I can now toggle the fill in the stroke by clicking that same curved arrow on the toolbar. Okay, so the only thing here now is that we're missing the stroke, which we will deal with, which is the outer black area. Okay, so how I'm going to offset the ear is I'm going to select the circle for the ear, select Object, Path, and Offset Path, And I'm going to offset it this time by quite a bit. I'm going to set it to 10 and press tab to preview it. And it looks like it needs to be offset even more than that. So I'm going to try 15 and press tab. And then press OK. And I can still, using my direct selection tool, stretch the proportions up and out a little bit. And then select the eyedropper, which is shortcut I on my keyboard, and then eyedrop to the black. I need to select Object, Arrange, and Send to Back, so that way it doesn't actually cut through the jaw area. Okay. For the hair, I'm going to select the hair. I'm going to select Object, Path, and then Offset Path. And 15 looks like a pretty good amount. Let's try though 12.5 and press tab and see how that looks. Okay, let's do 15.5 and then press OK. I'm going to press I on my keyboard to eyedrop to the black. And we can use the direct selection tool, shortcut V, to move it over as needed. And I'm going to press the plus icon on my keyboard to add an additional point right here, because you'll see that this comes up at a sharp line. And I'm going to add an additional point right here. That is the plus icon or the add button on your keyboard, which is usually located next to the delete key. If I press the minus key next to the plus key, I can delete the excess point on the side. Okay. I'm going to create the ellipse that creates the button. So if I press L on my keyboard for the ellipse tool, I'm going to just draw out the ellipse. I don't need to hold down Shift because it's not circular symmetric proportions, it's more of an oval. And I can press V on my keyboard to rotate the ellipse and then scale it in a little bit as needed. And I can rotate it. Okay. I'm going to press M on my keyboard to pull up the rectangle tool. And I'm going to just draw a rectangle out that approximates the width of the seam of his jacket. And then I'm going to press V on my keyboard and hover over the rightmost edge to rotate the shape a little bit. And I can press the down arrow key on my keyboard if I need to nudge it down a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to press I on my keyboard to eyedrop to the white, and this is going to be a very simple use of the pen tool because there's not really curves on his jacket. So I'm going to press P on my keyboard for the pen tool, click the edge of the shoulder, click the edge of the wrist, click the interior portion of the armpit, click downward for the edge of the robe, click outward for the other edge of the robe, click to the topmost edge, and then click straight across. I'm going to select V on my keyboard and then select Object, Arrange, and Send to Back. So you'll notice that we are missing the outline on the face, but don't worry, we will get to that. So I'm going to now tackle the offset for the robe. So I'm going to select Object, Path, and Offset Path. And I'm going to offset it by, let's try 10.5 and press tab. 10 looks a little bit too small, so I'm going to try 12.5 and press tab while preview is checked, and press OK. It's not perfect, but that's because the tapers sometimes come out a little bit more, so I'm going to press I on my keyboard and eyedrop to the black, just clicking the black. I'm going to press A on my keyboard to grab the direct selection tool, which allows me to edit certain anchor points or points on a path. And I'm going to click the bottommost anchor point and just drag it so it matches the reference a little bit more. Drag the bottom leftmost point and drag it so it matches the reference a little bit more. Grab the leftmost point and drag it so it matches the reference a little bit more. And grab the point under the armpit and drag that as well. I'm going to do, the other side actually looks pretty good. I realize though we are missing the right arm, so I'm going to eyedrop to the white again, press P on my keyboard, and click for the different interior points of the arm. And I'm going to click and drag slightly, holding downward at a diagonal, and I'm going to click the center point and then just bring it back to the original point at the wrist. If I press V for my selection tool, that commits the change. Okay, so really what we have left is just the offset on the face, the little boots, and the hands. So I'm going to press I on my keyboard and click to the shoes. I'm going to press P on my keyboard to click to the point at the top of the boot, click and drag downward, and then click the heel of the boot. Click straight across for the heel, click inward for the instep, click and drag slightly down and to the left for the other part of the instep, and then click at the center point. Clicking straight across for the base of the shoe where the toes are, clicking up and to the right for the curve here, and then clicking at the top of the shoe all the way across. And I'm going to press V for getting out of the pen tool. And then you can just click anywhere else. I'm going to press P one more time for the other shoe and clicking towards the top, clicking at the bottom, clicking across, clicking upward, clicking and dragging down and to the left, and then clicking at the center point of the anchor point, clicking across for the edge, clicking and dragging up and to the left, clicking to join with the top of the rest of the body, and then clicking straight across. And if need be, you can use your direct selection tool to grab any of the points that weren't lined up properly and just slightly tweak or adjust them. Remember, it's Command minus and Command plus to zoom in. There's also the lovely zoom tool on the side. Okay, so let's tackle the hands now. So being comfortable with the pen tool, I'm inclined to just eyedrop to the center of the gloves and start that way. However, you can build off of simple shapes as well by pressing the L tool on your keyboard for the ellipse and drawing out the base portion of the fingertip, and then using the V selection tool to rotate it. So I can drag this upward and then use the A direct selection tool to grab the bottommost point and drag that downward to get that fingertip. That did a pretty good job. So I'm going to press L on my keyboard again, drag out an ellipse, use V on my keyboard to rotate for the selection tool. And if I toggle the stroke and fill, you'll notice that the reference has more of a straight line for the fingertips. So I'm going to use my direct selection tool. I'm going to grab the rightmost point and I'll drag it downward and inward to create more of that straight line. Take the top point, drag it upward a little bit more. Take the leftmost point and just curve it inward just a little bit and scooch it in by selecting it and using my right arrow key on my keyboard. Okay, and then I can swap the fill and the stroke back. Going to do the same for the next finger, so using the ellipse tool, grabbing and dragging out the ellipse, using the V selection tool, and rotating the finger a bit. Using the A direct selection tool to grab the edge and pull outward. Use the rightmost handle and drag that to the right. Use the next handle on the left and position that a little bit better. If I use my plus icon on my keyboard, I can add an additional point, which this is found under the pen tool, and if you click and hold underneath it, you can find it. And then I'm going to use my A direct selection tool to drag this point outward and then angle the point a little bit more. Okay, so now we have 3 fingers. Now I'm going to do the next finger, pressing L on my keyboard. And I'm going to use V on my keyboard to rotate it, drag out the topmost edge, drag out the bottom edge to get the general shape. And this is the most curved finger of his fingers, so this one will involve a little bit more tweaking. I'm going to press A for my direct selection tool, grab this topmost point and pull it out a bit. I'm going to grab the bottommost point and pull it upward and forward a little bit. I'm going to use the plus icon on my keyboard to add a new point and then use A, the direct selection tool, to drag that point outward. Okay, so if I now use my pen tool, I can just do the sharp edge for the wrist. So I'm going to click, click, click across, and click, and then click. Now if I use my direct selection, my regular selection tool, which is shortcut V, I can shift select all of the fingers, and then I can use my pathfinder, which will allow me to make more complex shapes out of simple shapes. If I go to Window, and then to Pathfinder, which you'll just have to look for it. It's found right here, and that will pull up my Pathfinder. You can also find it under your Properties panel, and usually it's included, if I didn't actually pull up the Pathfinder this way, under Quick Actions. But I'm going to use the Shape Mode Unite, which is the first option. And there is a tiny little hole in the center. So what I'm going to do is press my direct selection tool, shortcut A, select the innermost point, and then hit delete. And then hit delete again to get rid of that little section. Alternatively, you can use the minus key on your keyboard to delete extra points that you don't need. Now using the direct selection tool, I'm going to grab the shape, go to Object, Path, Offset Path, and then set it to 12.5 and press OK. I drop to black, and we can do the other side. which the other side might just be a duplicate of the first side. So if I shift select both shapes with the one shape already selected and then holding down shift and clicking the second shape, I can hold down Option if I'm on a Mac, Alt if I'm on a PC, and drag out the duplicate. And then under Properties, you'll see that there is a reflection option which allows you to flip the shape horizontally across a vertical axis. So I'm going to just move this, and I'd say that's pretty close for being almost symmetric hands. So I'm just going to stretch and scale it up a little bit so it matches just a bit more. And there we go. I'm now going to take the arm that we did earlier, go to Object, Path, Offset Path, and press OK at 12.5. And then while it's still selected, press I on my keyboard to eyedrop to the black. Now all I really have to do is add the offset for the face shape. So I'm going to select the bottommost face shape right here, go to Object, Path, Offset Path, and I think it's supposed to be set to 15.5, so I'm going to press Tab, and then I'm going to press OK. I'm going to, with this, press I on my keyboard and eyedrop to the black, and then I get that offset for the chin. And I think I'm only just missing the little offset for this portion of the forehead right here, which I can just make quickly with the pen tool. So we pretty much have our Dexter character. The only thing is if I toggle off the visibility, I'll notice, one, I just need to scooch this shape up a little bit more. So I'm going to use the direct selection tool and just pull it upward to stretch or scale it up a little bit more. And then for the outermost edge right here, I'm going to use the eyedropper, select the black, select the edge of the glasses, select upward to the edge of the hair, and then select downward, and then finish the shape. I can then use my direct selection tool V, select Object, Arrange, and send to back. And then the only thing I'm really missing now is just the little curl of the hair. So you'll notice on the original that we have over on the side, it has these little loops that go on the inside. So while you don't have to do the loops, I will show you how I would do the loops. So I'm going to use the pen tool, which is P on my keyboard. I'm going to click at the center of the loop, click and drag up into the left, and then click up or down into the right, and then click down into the left. I would then toggle the fill and stroke and press V on my keyboard to complete the path. I would then hold down Shift and W, which this is more of an advanced option, which is why I'm not requiring it right away. But if you, this allows you to taper parts of the strokes so that it's not all the same thickness for the stroke. So if I click and hold at the top, I can make the loop a little bit thicker at the top, and then if I click and hold at the bottom, I can make the width of the base also match the reference as well. So I'm going to use my direct selection tool. Now I'm going to drag the loop over to the version we've been working on, and I'm going to do the same for the second loop. So I'm going to press P on my keyboard, click and drag up into the left at a diagonal, click and drag down into the left click and drag down and to the right, and then follow through. Pressing V on my keyboard to complete the shape, and then Shift and W to pull up that width tool, which will allow me to taper the width of the stroke a little bit more. I'm just going to click and drag outward to make it a little bit thicker towards the end. Now I can use my V selection tool to take the loop, drag it over to the side, and finish it with the character. And now we have our fully editable Dexter character. You can go through, you can change the color of anything that you wish by double clicking on the fill, customizing it, making it more your own, and having fun with it. So that is how you create Dexter using Adobe Illustrator.